Hi all, a new day and new stories from Ocean Story. Just listen to this story. I was almost kicked out of my own house because of a guy who rented a room for me. My parents bought a small house for me so that I could get to college conveniently and not have to pay rent to someone else. At college, I met a new friend of mine who needed a room to rent. Carter and I agreed that he would pay me $300 a month for rent. To me, this is not a very large amount of money and very reasonable because it takes no more than 10 minutes to walk from my house to the college. It's very convenient and you can always leave, not so early to be on time for classes. Carter agreed to such conditions and has been living with me for 2 months. My house is really small and has a total of 5 rooms. There are 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a dressing room with a bathtub. You can't really invite anyone over because there is so little space. Even though Carter and I lived in the same house, we were in our rooms all the time, so we did not communicate with each other much. Only when we played a game together or had breakfast before university. It didn't stop me from living my life in peace and doing my own thing. At the end of the school year, Carter and I had a very acute situation. My neighbor's brother and his whole family were supposed to come to visit. That is, a husband, wife, and 1 child who is 1 year old. Carter came to my room that day, as his brother was already on his way to us. He asked me if I would mind if his brother stayed with us for a while. I said yes, thinking it would be until the evening, until they found a hotel. I had some urgent things to do, as it was the end of the academic year at the university, and I had to hand in some papers to my teachers, and then I wanted to go out with my friends. It all took a little bit of time, and I got back almost at 10 in the evening. To my surprise, I saw extra shoes at the entrance and realized that my neighbor's brother was still in my house. Then I went into the living room, but it was empty. A few seconds later, I heard someone snoring from my room. I quietly opened the door to my room and saw people I didn't know there. It made me a little angry that my neighbor's brother was staying in my house and in my room. I did not shout or do anything. First, I thought about what to do and how to resolve the situation. I went to Carter's room and asked him to explain the whole situation to me. Carter said that my brother wanted to find a hotel, but he was very tired after the journey, so he fell asleep and I didn't wake him up. I told him I didn't like the fact that I couldn't sleep in my own house at the moment. Carter told me you can lie down in the bathroom or on the floor in the living room. I started arguing with Carter because his relatives were sleeping in my house without my knowledge. Carter asked me to understand him and not to disturb his brother's sleep. I explained to him that I would have done, so if Carter had warned me about it, maybe I would have stayed at my friend's place and there would have been a free room. But it didn't happen and I want to sleep in my own house. Carter asked me to calm down and he was ready to pay me. I refused the money because I needed a place to sleep. In the end, I told Carter, you will sleep somewhere else and I will take your room for tonight, so that tomorrow until noon, your relatives will not be at my place and you will enjoy your time together outside my house. Otherwise, I will call the police and tell them that you are all here illegally. Carter was very angry with me and said that I was acting like a bastard with no compassion. The next morning, I got up and reminded Carter to kick out his brother and his family. In the afternoon, they were still at my place. I started arguing with Carter for not doing what I asked. Carter's brother joined the conversation, and the 3 of us started to argue. I kicked them out of my house by myself. I also told Carter that he would have 2 days to get out of my house for good. I probably overreacted, but what could I do? I didn't want this story to happen again. Today, Carter invited his brother over. Tomorrow, he will invite his parents, and then all his relatives. I will not stand for this. Grace, wow, that is certainly a difficult situation. I can understand why you were disappointed that Carter allowed his brother to stay without your consent, especially for so long. After all, it's your house and you should have the final say on who stays in it, but kicking them out might have been a little harsh. I think it would have been better to talk to Carter calmly, explain to him what's bothering you, and find a solution together. I hope he realizes his mistake and finds a new place to live, as you asked. I can't imagine any of my friends doing something like that. You may have been rude, but it would not be right to ignore such insolence. Owen, in my opinion, Carter acted like an asshole. for not thinking about you at all. He thought you just put up with him in silence and that was that. I hate it when people think they can do whatever they want. You were right to kick Carter and his family out of your house. I think Carter's brother could have found a place to live on the road. Carter probably told him, "You can come to my house, I have a room for you." I'm surprised you didn't realize what a jerk Carter is before. He acted very selfishly, so he was still smart enough to fight with you. Kick Carter out for good and forget about it. Now I want to tell a different story. I have been living with my wife Chloe for 10 years and we have 2 children. Recently, my uncle Wyatt came to visit me, whom I hadn't seen in a couple of years. My uncle has a complicated history and it's worth telling you a little bit about him. Wyatt had an accident 4 years ago and spent 6 months in the hospital recovering. Wyatt almost completely recovered, and he had only a minimal problem with his leg. This is a very good result because doctors said he would not be able to walk at all. But not everything is so great with Wyatt. Because of the accident he was in, his brain started to work a little differently. Wyatt continues to work and live independently, but sometimes he can do strange things that are very difficult to explain. For example, Wyatt can sit around and tell everyone that he worked as a dentist for 10 years and shows a collection of patients' teeth that have been pulled out. In fact, these are his own teeth, which he asked to keep after the dentist removed them. Wyatt can put salt in his coffee and drink it, as if it were the sweetest drink he's ever had. This is how he has lived for the past 3 years. We've all gotten used to my uncle's eccentricities, but my wife, Chloe, can hardly stand my uncle and his problems. So for her, having Wyatt in my house was very difficult. I barely managed to convince her to let Wyatt stay with us for at least 2 days. Early in the morning, Wyatt came to my house. I was asleep at the time, so my wife went to open the door for him. For your information, my uncle lives not far from us and has his own car and a house with a small area. On the outskirts of the city, Wyatt has a small farm and keeps pigs at home. He has a nice field near him and great conditions to keep the animals. It sounds a bit strange, but I wrote that my uncle is not easy. Chloe opened the door and stood still. My uncle came with a stupid pig. Chloe started telling him that Wyatt would not be able to come into our house if the pig came with him. I woke up from my wife's loud words and went to see what was going on. I was teary-eyed when I saw the pig on my doorstep. Chloe kept yelling for Wyatt to leave the pig and come in alone. Personally, I don't mind animals and love them, but a pig in my house is too much. I decided to make a little joke and said, "Chloe, what are you doing? Let's have the pig stay with us for 2 days too." She yelled at me and said, "You was crazy like you uncle." Chloe walked away and told me to make up my mind. I had to talk to Wyatt and tell him that I couldn't let him in if the pig was also there. Wyatt was very upset and begged me to let him in, but I stood my ground and continued to refuse. Although in my heart, I wanted to be with the pig, but for the sake of my wife, I asked Wyatt to leave. It was strange to think that a big pig could live in a house with people. My uncle never came back to us and was very offended that Chloe and I had hurt his feelings, because for him the pig was a friend, not just an animal like we thought. Wyatt called his brother, or rather my dad, and he told him that Chloe and I had hurt him very much. My dad told me to apologize to my uncle and invite him back to my house. Even when I explained to my dad what Wyatt had done, he said my brother is a little stupid, but that's no reason to yell at him and kick him out of the house. I told my wife about it. Chloe said, "If you invite your uncle over again, we'll have him over. I will leave and you will live with a pig instead of a wife." My uncle does not want to talk to me until he is invited to come to my house again. My wife is against Wyatt coming. It's just a vicious circle with no way out. Penelope, I understand why your wife was upset about the pig being in the house. It's not something you would expect, but your uncle clearly has a special bond with this pig. It sounds like it means a lot to him. Perhaps you could find a compromise. For example, invite your uncle to visit without the pig, or even invite him to go to his house to spend time there with him and the pig. Because I'm not crazy about pets either. I don't even know what my reaction would be if a pig were to live in my house. Your wife's reaction is justified. What your uncle did was very strange. His only excuse is that Wyatt has a problem with his head. Otherwise, I thought it was a stupid joke. John, if I told anyone, no one would believe such a strange story. Just imagine, your uncle brought a pig a few miles from his house. Maybe Wyatt has a problem with his mind, but his sense of humor is very cool. But seriously, you should have told your uncle not to do that again. Your wife was clearly very scared and under a lot of stress. Even if it was a pig that couldn't hurt anyone. It's not cool to have a big pig living in the same room as people. Eventually, it might chew on things or make a mess on the floor. But I can definitely agree with one thing. This story is very funny, and I will tell my friends about it. Layla, your dad and you and your uncle are very strange people. Pigs don't belong with people. What if she was sick with something? It's not a very funny question. In fact, everyone could have had problems from a pig. Your uncle scared Chloe and got himself upset. Maybe you should talk to him and make a promise to Wyatt that next time the pig won't be with him. I hope you and Chloe will look back on this with a smile, because from the outside, it's hard to see. A young girl screaming on the doorstep, while a man stands in front of her, holding a leash that secures the pig. It is very strange and incomprehensible. I'm glad you listened to Chloe and kicked your uncle out. Next story. My husband Aiden and I have been together for 15 years. We have a small family of 3 children. My oldest daughter Scarlett is now 13 years old. I also have a daughter and a son, and my son is now 10 years old. And my daughter is 4 years old and goes to kindergarten. My husband and I work a lot and have a lot to do during the week. Aiden has several meetings in the middle of the week in addition to work. He helps people make various crafts out of wood or paper. Aiden has been doing this since he was in school. I also have a job like my husband, although I don't have any hobbies other than babysitting. This year, my husband got a promotion and became the head of the produce department. Aiden started earning 5 times more. This gave us a chance to sell our old apartment, which had only 3 rooms. We could buy a house with 5 rooms in a few months. My children and I were incredibly happy that they would have their own rooms, and now no one will come to me and complain that they are uncomfortable sleeping in the same room as someone else. In any case, the change of our place of residence had a very good effect on our whole family. Physically, it's a bit difficult to realize. It's almost the end of the school year, and I don't know how appropriate it would be to transfer my children to another school. Perhaps Aiden and I could wait a bit longer for the children to finish this year at the school they are in now. My husband and I decided to tell our parents about our new opportunity at a family dinner. Unfortunately, we did not find a good option in the neighborhood. Aiden saw a good option in almost another city. We went there once, and I can tell you that moving there would be a very good decision. There is a lot of free space in that area and the opportunity to plant your own garden or make a small area for recreation. Aiden and I never had that opportunity. Because we lived in an apartment, we made the final decision to move there. So at dinner, when my parents and sister came over, my husband's dad was there as well. My husband grew up with only his father. After the age of 13, Aiden's mother died of an illness, and since then, his father has not found a worthy replacement. My family took the news of our move very well, especially when I showed them some videos and photos of the house. My sister gave me some interesting ideas on how to make the house even more practical. I was very happy that my family was not too sad about our decision. My husband's dad was very upset by my husband's speech. Mr. Matthew had a hurt look on his face for the rest of the dinner. I noticed it right away and told my husband about it. After dinner, Aiden went to talk to his dad. I was also present during this conversation. Matthew turned to my husband and asked that we change our minds and not leave him alone, because his grandchildren are everything he exists for. I was touched when I heard this, but it was quite clear that our move would not be a bad thing within my family. Maybe my family or my father's father would miss me. However, it would be a mistake to rely on these feelings, and we could live in the old apartment for a long time. My husband answered his father, "I am very grateful to you for your support and for always being there for our children, especially when I had to work a lot and my wife was busy with other issues. However, these are different times in my family, and I have to think about the future." Matthew was not satisfied with my husband's answer. He began to blame Aiden and me for not seeming to appreciate his kindness and care for our children. Matthew said, "It's clear, you came to me and called me when you needed my services. Who needs an old man now? I thought you would never betray me." My husband started to tell his father, "We are going to another city, but that doesn't mean you will never see us or your grandchildren." Matthew did not want to talk to us. He went to his car and drove away. I had a very strange feeling of guilt after that. It was only a few days later that Aiden and I were able to establish contact with his father. Matthew told us that we should give up our idea and live in the same city as him. We denied this possibility and told him that our children often ask for separate rooms for themselves. This is impossible to do within an apartment, so we will definitely change our place of residence, regardless of his opinion. Matthew got very angry and said, "You never thought about my feelings. If you want to leave me, you can do it. I'm tired of persuading you." Matthew stopped answering our calls and wouldn't let us in so that we could work things out. Eventually, we moved to a new house, and the children are very happy, as are my husband and I. At this time, Matthew started saying that we were selfish and traitors. Matthew said he would never have contact with us again. I don't understand why his reaction is so horrible and how to fix it. Did Aiden and I really do something wrong to Matthew? Samuel, first of all, you and Aiden shouldn't think about the opinion of every relative, because many people may not like something. So now you have to listen to everyone. If it will be better for you and your family to live in a house instead of an apartment, then do it. My old dad was also weird, so I hardly listened to him after I was 16. I understand that Matthew doesn't want to be alone, but he can't stop your family from doing the right thing. In my opinion, Matthew is an old egomaniac who couldn't care less about your comfort for his own. Why couldn't he just be happy for you and accept your move? If Matthew doesn't want to talk to you, then so be it. It's his choice. Don't think about it. It's not your fault. Victoria, moving to a new home to give your children more space and opportunities. It is a positive decision for the future of your family. It is understandable that you would want to put your children's needs and well-being first. This is normal for reasonable people. Matthew's reaction seems to stem from a deep emotional attachment to your family and his grandchildren. Perhaps he feels abandoned or hurt because he was an important part of your life, especially when it comes to helping with the children. His reaction is fueled by a fear of losing regular contact with your family. I can completely understand how he felt. Although your decision to move was not an easy one and was based on improving the quality of life for your family, it's important to acknowledge Matthew's feelings and have a frank conversation with him. This may not be possible right now. If I were you, I would call him from time to time. It may take some time for Matthew to come to terms with the changes, so be patient and give him space if necessary. Over time, he may come to accept the situation and understand that the happiness and future of your family remains a top priority. A story that really surprised me. I am now 42 years old and have two wonderful sons. My husband David has always raised them to be courageous and proud. Now my youngest son is about to go to an important event for him. Joseph asked my husband to lend him his special outfit because Joseph will be going to his girlfriend's parents' house for Thanksgiving and he doesn't have any very cool things. David agreed to give his holiday clothes in the form of a jacket and nice pants. My son was very grateful to his dad for saving him. David said, "Son, my golden days are over. I don't need this suit as much as you do. You can have it forever." Joseph was incredibly happy and went home happily. After that, I talked to my husband because he had never been so generous to anyone. David told me that he had once been young like Joseph. At the age of 22, his father gave him his suit to wear to the wedding with me. So now he personally had the opportunity to do something incredible for his son. I never heard this story from David. I really liked that my husband could be so sensitive and generous because you rarely see him smile or show emotions of joy. This time David was not like himself. All this happened 2 weeks before Joseph was supposed to go on vacation. We don't know the parents of my son's girlfriend well, so this year we will celebrate with just our family. In the middle of the week, Joseph started trying on the suit he received from David. My son understood, even though the suit looked very respectable and solid, it was a little too old and didn't fit him well. Since this suit is now my son's property, Joseph decided to go to a tailor to have the suit altered to his specifications. Joseph also replaced the sleeves on the jacket, and now they were just black without the thin white stripes. My son was very pleased with the result. A few days after the suit was ready, Joseph came to see David and me to invite us to celebrate Thanksgiving with his girlfriend's parents. I was very happy to hear that. I wanted to get to know them better. Also, my son said he had updated his costume a little bit. David reacted to this and asked to see what had changed. When David saw what my son had changed, he was very angry. David told my son that he could only hem the size of the clothes, not make any substitutions in the fabric. Joseph said, "I know it's an important thing for you, but it's mine now, and it seemed like the right thing to do to fix the jacket a little bit." David went on to say that from now on his great outfit is ruined and looks ugly. My son was very upset that David did not appreciate his taste. David continued to insist that Joseph should have asked him for permission before making such an important change in his outfit. They had a big fight. I tried to calm David down because he was getting too aggressive. My husband was giving Joseph an ultimatum, like, "I won't go to your girlfriend's parents if you don't return my suit to the way it used to look." My son told him how to do it if everything was done by a master, and he had already thrown away the extra materials. Joseph tried to explain to his dad that there was nothing he could do to bring it back. David said, "You let a stranger make your clothes," and then he threw away the materials. "You were very stupid and disrespectful to my gift. I gave you my suit to wear, not to do something new with it." Joseph replied, "I appreciate what you did, father, but the suit didn't fit me very well, and I had no choice but to take it to the workshop." David asked my son to be quiet and said, "You could have just returned the suit and used something else." That was the end of their conversation, and Joseph went home with the suit. The next day, I tried to talk to David so that he could understand what his son had done, but David wouldn't listen to me at all. He said that the suit meant much more to me than just a suit I used to wear. My son should have just worn it a few times and not made something modern out of it. By doing so, he really ruined a good suit. Now, I will not be able to forgive Joseph. I said to my husband, "Are pieces of fabric so much more important to you than your relationship with your son?" David didn't say anything and just kept quiet. I continued to tell them, even if Joseph comes today and returns the suit as it was before, your relationship won't be as good anymore, and there will be a gap between you now. You can fix it if you admit that you were rude and apologize to Joseph. My husband said, "I have nothing to apologize to the little pest." I tried several times to talk to him about it. Each time David asked me to forget about it and leave him alone. In the end, my son had a great holiday. David thinks that Joseph is a jerk who does what he wants with other people's things. After the party, my husband never spoke to Joseph again and refuses to ever speak to him. My husband is behaving like a sheep. I'm just looking for some advice on how to make things work between them. Madison, it seems that there is a deeper issue here. David's attachment to the suit is understandable, given its sentimental value, but I think he may have gone a little overboard. Joseph probably didn't realize how much the suit meant to his father. However, I also understand Joseph's desire to make the suit more suitable for him, especially if it didn't fit perfectly. It's a shame they had such a heated argument about it. My dad isn't perfect either, but such a violent reaction is not justified at all. David didn't say anything to his son that he shouldn't make alterations or sew something on the suit. It's like if I give a book to someone and then come back later and see that my friend has made some marks. I start yelling at him and tell him he had no right to do that to the book. But forgive me, if something was given to someone, it is their will to do whatever they want with that thing. David is a very adult and should understand this. Luna, you should relax and not pester your husband. Let him appreciate the importance of communicating with his son. I completely understand David's position. If he lent the suit to Joseph, hoping that he would wear it as is, I can understand his disappointment. Obviously, this suit has great sentimental value for him. However, I also see Joseph's point of view. If it didn't fit him well, it makes sense that he would like to have it adjusted to his needs. I think they both should have communicated better from the beginning. Instead of arguing, they could have discussed what Joseph plans to do with the suit. It's a shame that it has come to this. I hope they can work it out and maybe even find a compromise or a way to mend their relationship. Although it sounds like your husband is very proud and unlikely to give in on this issue. I find it very strange when two grown men fight over things. My next story. I have a small team with whom I work on various projects. We have a headquarters in New York where many people work. The company I work for is focused on online work. That is, there are only a few offices in the whole country with managers. I've always wanted to work from home and not have to go to work every morning and spend a lot of time in traffic, which can make you late or lose your job. My team is engaged in the development of clothing. This includes designing styles and possible patterns. Then we pass it on to another team that deals with finding suppliers of such services. Other people make our project and deal with sales. There is a lot of important work for each team at each stage. When we need to hold a meeting with colleagues, we do it in Zoom. Currently, I have an executive job as a chief designer. Before that, I worked for a leading company for 5 years, but I decided to change jobs to have more time. I often tell my colleagues that they can contact me, not only for work-related issues. After another conversation with my colleagues, one of the girls asked me to talk to her. Let's just say her name was Riley, and she wasn't too shy to ask questions. I asked her what she was interested in this time. Riley said, "I suspect I'm pregnant, and my boyfriend is afraid of becoming a dad. I'm not the kind of person who can support or say something important in a good way." So I asked Riley to tell me a little bit about her life. Riley said that her boyfriend has no plans to have children for the next 3 years, so she is afraid that her boyfriend will not be happy to know that she is pregnant. I listened to Riley's story to the end and said, "How can this be useful for us?" Riley looked at me and asked what I meant. I told her how this story could help us move forward within the company. Riley said, "I don't understand how my story can help." Then I asked her if maybe we could think of an interesting pattern for our clothes. Riley replied, "I will think about your questions." I asked her if she had anything else she wanted to tell me. Riley said she was hoping for some important advice or words. I was sorry to admit that I could not help her in any way. I said to my colleague Riley, "I am really sorry for you, and I think your boyfriend will not mind if you tell him about your pregnancy." Then we ended the conversation because I had to go to the store. 3 days later, Riley wrote to me and said that her boyfriend had become very cold to her. After he found out about Riley's possible pregnancy, I wrote again to express my condolences to Riley and offered to give her a few days off. Riley did not respond for a long time, and 2 days later she wrote that her boyfriend had left her because Riley's pregnancy was confirmed. I felt very uncomfortable that this was partly my fault, but I have to admit that Riley couldn't keep it a secret for long, and eventually her boyfriend found out about the pregnancy. After this incident, Riley has been avoiding me and won't answer my questions when I talk to her team. I started to feel guilty about everything that happened in Riley's life. None of the conversations I had with her yielded good results. I am an asshole who ruined a young girl's life. My wife said it wasn't my fault, but I don't even know how to make it up to Riley. Luke, dude, calm down. What can you do for Riley now? Are you going to adopt her baby for confessing her pregnancy to her real dad? If I do something and ask another person for advice, I will be the only one to blame because the decision to do or not to do is mine alone. Riley is going through a lot of stress right now and doesn't know how to react to everything that's happening. At least now try to understand her and leave her alone. Of course, you shouldn't have given her any important advice. It could have all been over if you had just listened to Riley and not given her stupid advice. Maybe you don't know what to say in a difficult situation, but that doesn't give you a complete excuse. Zoe, as my mom used to say, if you don't know anything, just admit it and keep quiet. This is a case where you should have kept quiet. You gave a strong piece of advice to your subordinate, and her life changed after that. It's too bad that you became one of the factors of negative change. Riley should have sought advice from her family or friends, not her coworkers. If you have any conscience, you should apologize to Riley and offer support after she gives birth. Otherwise, you will be the worst person I know. Your wife should have told you that what you did was wrong. I have to admit that Riley's life has been completely different since your advice. Of course, there are many questions for a guy like Riley who doesn't want to be an adult and responsible. But you are the center of the problem now. Jaden, why would Riley date a guy who is not ready for a serious relationship? If you want to have a relationship, you should have it with an adult who is capable of building a strong relationship. What Riley is accusing you of is completely wrong because you expressed one of the possible opinions. You cannot make important decisions based on just one opinion. No one in their right mind should do that at all. All those who blame the author for this story probably have no idea that he cannot be blamed for the opinion he expressed. I am sorry that Riley found herself in this situation, but she shouldn't be looking for someone to blame. She should fix the situation before it's too late. Otherwise, she will definitely lose her life and will be surviving and resenting the author all the time.